All right. Scott, the table is yours. All yours.
Is this on? Perfect. DJ Tomio's fantastic intro. Thank you. Very good. So I'm Sky Holden, Senior Vice President of Sales at AdColony, and we're really focused on delivering the highest quality video experience on the mobile platform. It's an in-app only opportunity. We're really trying to solve the challenge we all have as consumers, which is latency and buffering on the mobile device. I have a great panel here, so I'll start with Winston on the end. Just briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll dive right in.
Hey there, I'm Winston, booming voice, I guess, here. Chief Digital Officer at Deutsch.
Potemkin. You can actually see up here. I'm at I do digital strategy.
My name is Kalle. I'm the Chief Digital Officer of Goodby, Silverstein and Partners here in San Francisco.
And I'm Dan Buczaczer. I'm EVP Creative Partnerships at VivaKi. And don't ever play blackjack with Perrin in Vegas during CES or event up here.
Welcome. Perfect. Winston, let's start with you. We had some really interesting conversations as a group and individually, backstage and coming into this. You spoke a lot about your desire and about the need to move past storytelling and paid media, and really focused on experimental from a mobile perspective. I'd love if you spend some time on that, and we'll go through some examples.
Sure. I've been doing digital probably as long as most people in this room, and yet still it feels like we fight for dollars and fight for opportunity. And particularly on the larger brands we work with. I think there's an appetite for innovation, there's an appetite for mobile, but people they have trouble finding room, right, for innovation, particularly if it's new. And one thing we always talk to our clients about is that storytelling, particularly for brands like Volkswagen and our big ones like Target and Taco Bell, is so relevant, and it does such a good job of reaching people. But we also need to be looking at trying to invent the future, right, and trying to find new ways to engage with our customers. And I think particularly for some of our smaller brands that are more of challengers, it's a more ripe opportunity for that kind of thinking. And so whenever I can, I find a way to try and push the latest and greatest experiments we have in our brains, these brands.
That's perfect. So do you want to briefly intro the Pop Secret example we're going to see in a second?
Sure. So Pop Secret is one of our clients, they're part of the Dominus Food Groups. And they get outspent about 6-1 by Orville Redenbacher, which I went through the process is, all of the popcorn movie theater is actually Orville Redenbacher. They own the theater experience, and traditionally what Pop Secret had done is they would do one TV spot that would run about 4 weeks during the prime popcorn season, which is summer. And they would essentially go dark for the rest of the year, so out of the conversation completely. We do a thing called D-School, which is a digital education, like immersion day for our clients. We took Diamond through it and talked about the notion of little bets, an idea that Peter Sims, the author, has written really eloquently about. And they're putting more out there. I mean, the reality is we talked about it this morning, but most ideas fail, right? I mean, 3 or 4 apps fail, and it takes 3,000 ideas to get to one commercially viable product. And I think we're really precious with our advertising, but most ads do fail. Let's be honest. And what we believe is that we have to put more out there. So we came up with this idea called Pop Secret Labs. And the mission, we really believe in audacious and very ambitious missions for everything we do in digital. And the mission for this campaign was to become the most talked about popcorn brand online by connecting the brand to home movie watching, right? So if Orville owned the theater, we would own home movie watching content, right? So that's Hulu, YouTube, Netflix, and so on. So we came up with 10 experiments, digital experiments that we did over the course of the year. And they were a mix of one was a Chrome browser extension, the others were creative media partnerships. We're actually among our more successful projects. But the one that really kind of broke through was this one called Perfect Pop. And what we did, we looked online, and particularly on Twitter, we found that a lot of people were popcorn, a lot of people. and then, you know, it's anywhere from the office to the home. And we saw an opportunity, an unmet need, a problem we could solve. So we came up with this app that would actually help you not burn your popcorn. So you hold it up to your microwave, it uses the microphone to tell you when to take it out. And so I think we've got a video, but you know, actually first I'll talk about the metrics as I think we move on. But again, what we were really after was trying to win share of voice. And at the peak of this campaign, we kind of were 2 times X over Orville Redenbacher. And I think what's important to me, and we talked a little bit about this, is that when we look at metrics and analytics, you got to think of the big picture. And use mobile not just to drive kind of funnel metrics, but also to use as a means to drive awareness and consideration. So here's a video. Or not. Okay, well I just told you anyway, go check it out. So 225,000 downloads now, and that's modest, right, when we're talking about the scope of what we're seeing from Silicon Valley. But for a branded app, it's relatively significant. There was some media drawn to it to help drive that. The next one, I think one more slide I've got here. This actually is our newest, and we call these things kernels, which are experiments. This is the newest one. It's called Poptopia with the Pop Dongle. And to me, this is one of the most favorite things I've worked on because it was just a prototype. Right, so basically what this is, there's a game called Poptopia. You swipe a piece of butter, and it emits a sub-audible frequency that helps, through this dongle you connect your iPhone, and it spritzes popcorn smell. So it's the world's first smellable mobile game, and that's a verified fact. And the thing is that we only made 30 of these things. We gave 25 to tech influencers. We put 3 up on eBay and donated the proceeds to charity, and we made a video. Something we've learned is very important. And it got within over a month. It earned 354 million earned media impressions, and really that makes it one of probably the top 2 ad campaigns that we did all of last year, including Super Bowl. And that's a really important thing for me that we're talking more about is that, A, prototypes can be effective ads, right? If the job is to create awareness, which this did, let's think about it that way. But also, again, this notion of testing and learning and experimenting. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think prolific, not precious is kind of our mantra, particularly in the mobile space.
It's fantastic, thank you. Sarah,
Yes.
hello. So I've always felt personally that the best creative campaign execution is really nothing without a really amazing and solid media campaign. So I'd love your thoughts on that, as well as you give an example of Neutrogena.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, okay, so I'm a media person sitting on a panel about creative. And when I told some of my friends that I was doing this, they were like, huh, how'd you swing that one? That's kind of weird. And you know, I think it's actually really cool because, you know, we all have different interpretations of what we think is sexy. I freaking love your popcorn burning app thing. That's so awesome because one of the things about branded apps is that you kind of have to check your ego at the door a little bit and say, you know, am I creating an app that's going to get one person to use it once, or is it going to actually offer true value to, you know, the consumer? And so by, you know, actually providing a service, and I think not having burnt popcorn as a service, to be honest, I think that's great. But you know, what I really think is sexy in the mobile space is, you know, are areas in which you're using some of the native functionality of the device that, you know, that you're running on to you know, provide some sort of service to the consumer. And so whether that might be, you know, some of the tune-in ads that you see where you can, you know, click a button and add, you know, some TV programming to your calendar, whether it's, you know, some of the Shazam-enabled stuff, you know, integration with mapping, accelerometers. Some people have talked about that today. You know, all that kind of stuff is what makes for sexy mobile creative in my book. But let me tell you a little bit about Neutrogena. So this was a partnership with Ansible, and you just heard from Ansible in the panel before me. And what I totally dig about this is that we did a couple of things. One, you know, we focused on geographies where there's a UV rating of 6 or higher, so people like me who get burned after about 2 seconds. And we delivered those people targeted banner ads. And then within that itself, we had a call to action that actually was a dynamic little thing to show how close you were to a retailer that sold Neutrogena sunblock. So you're really focusing in on where there's an opportunity for sunblock, how close you can get to it, and if somebody clicks on it, they can get a map to help them get to a store to buy sunblock. And also there's a coupon involved. And this thing, we talked a little bit today about couponing and how great that is, and we did an amazing job on couponing with this one. But this also, this overall execution also did really well in softer metrics, such as engagement and awareness and things like that. And so that to me is what makes for something really, really sexy in mobile space.
Kalle, welcome. So you were speaking backstage about the multi-screen executions, and then there's Chevy, which we'll go into in a second. So take it away.
So I think that both what you guys mentioned just now is really important. What it really shows me is that user values that really drives at least our motivation to create great work. So the way we come out of it is that we try to focus on strategy, obviously being a huge kind of driver as to what it is that we do. The insights that we get is extremely great. And we've been talking a lot about today is quantify, being able to quantify those numbers. But it's the insight that comes out of it. And the previous panel about the robots will take over the world, I think that's absolutely, it will take over some of the jobs, but there will still be a need for people behind to create actionable items and create it from that. So I'm here today just to show you a little bit about the stuff that we did for Chevy, to talk to you guys. With Chevy, it came down to, we had two insights. It was actually 2012, which seems to me like it's a very long time ago now. But I wanted to bring it up to you because I still think it's a great kind of experiment where we combine the multi-screen with the TV, the mobile, the iPad, and so forth. And the insight we learned was that from the 100 million people that actually watch the Super Bowl, 52% of those they go to the game at a friend's house, but they're not there to watch the football. They're actually there to drink, I guess, and to eat barbecue and watch the ads. So we figured out, since 80% of those people actually watch TV with their mobile or their tablet in hand, we figured out that that's a great way to kind of capture this mass audience and create a kind of a synergy between the two. So I guess we should just look at the video before I say anything that we'll see again. All right, see you.
Super Bowl is the most watched American television broadcast of the year, drawing over 100 million viewers. With almost 50 advertisers competing for viewers' attention, how do you stand out? We decided to game the system and add another screen. Over 50% of people go to a Super Bowl party for something other than watching the game. The Chevy Game Time app, a live second screen experience, gave them a legit reason to play with their phones for hours. The Game Time app was designed to hijack viewers' attention for the entire game. It gave people a reason to focus on our ads very closely and distracted them from watching our competitors' ads. We started by previewing our Super Bowl spots on the app, letting people know they could win cars from our commercials. On game day, we got people to answer trivia questions about our ads during commercial breaks. Since this could win you a Chevy, the entire Super Bowl parties watched our ads very closely, first on TV, then again on the app. To make double sure people would be focused on our ads, we gave each app user a license plate. And if you spotted your plate in our commercials, you won the car. Which of course got app users to watch our ads again and again, all the while racking up our YouTube views. The app extended the game beyond TV by letting people interact with the broadcast in a totally new way. A team of 20 writers and technicians pushed real-time questions and polls to the app, letting players react to what they just saw on TV. And when we asked people to do something, they did, at times drawing 130,000 players to answer a question at the same time, more than double the attendance at the Super Bowl stadium. By the end of the game, we had over 21 million questions answered. The app had over 700,000 users, was a featured app in both iTunes and Android stores, and made it to the top 10 of the iTunes App Store, past Angry Birds and Facebook. Owning the Super Bowl? Now there's an app for that.
So I guess if you want to make great apps, just give away 20 Chevys. 20 cars. No, but seriously, I think what this comes down to is what I heard the first panel, everyone said, no, you should actually do that if you know what you're doing. Just we created tremendous value with this. We had about 1.6 million hours quality time with the ads that we aired during the Super Bowl, and it was only out for a week, and it was just kind of amazing. We had, like I think it was mentioned there, but the engagement was phenomenal. Every second we had 130,000 questions answered during the Super Bowl. So it's all about planning, what you need to do in order to create kind of great apps, I guess.
So on that thought, I want to go back to Winston briefly and really talk about some of the thoughts around whether you should build an app or not. Winston, what were the results that you guys saw from the Pop Secret app? How did you sort of quantify success?
Well, we created KPIs beforehand, so we exceeded them greatly. Now, what I would say is when we sold these 10 experiments to the client, we said most may fail, if not all, most of them. But let's look and look at the data, and the ones that had some momentum, we would continue to iterate on. And that's a big change, right? Because there still is this launch and leave it mentality in advertising, and the service space and in the app space, that's not how you think. A lot of what you do. So, for example, Perfect Pop, what we're doing now is, we think it did pretty well in its first iteration. But now we want to turn it into more of a social loyalty play, right? Because the reality is that a lot of people have popcorn in their cupboard. They've maybe used this app once or twice, but we want to use it as a means to nudge people into eating more popcorn and enjoying having fun with that experience. So we're going to continue to kind of move forward with that. But one thing when I was looking at Kalle, there's two things. One, a great video is very important.
Yes.
And the reality is what I love about, and I also think media is very important. I always say, I love having a media person next to me or next to our teams when we create, because media is creative. And it's where we get our ideas, it's where the tools are. And the thing for me is that, the importance of story is so important in all this, right? Like the storytelling aspect. And there's so much clutter, like we talk about apps guides. It's not enough just to be useful anymore. You have to really tell a story. I'm finally reading The Black Swan, maybe years late here, but I love that notion that people remember stories and not ideas. And I think that's really important for all of us and what we do. And again, I look at mobile as this. I think what's been most exciting about it for us is that there's just so many new opportunities to reinvent and fuck with things, frankly, and break through and change business.
All about creative cursing. That's fantastic. So Dan, you lost a bet. Welcome. So when I originally saw your title, head of creative marketing at VivaKi, my first question was, what do you do, right? So please tell the audience sort of your role, and we'll talk about Samsung in a second.
Sure, yeah. So VivaKi is a resource across all of Publicis Group. We're part of Publicis Group, and we really sit across all of the agencies. And the whole idea is what things make sense to create in the center that all of our agencies can take advantage of. Historically, that's largely been things around programmatic and media buying and things like that. But my role now specifically is what things can also help creative folks and strategy folks within all of our business agencies. So that's really what I'm focused on. Mobile's obviously a piece of that. I think some of the comments that have come across the panel so far, this panel and also earlier, someone talked about that shoebox where you kind of have innovation and you've got scale and trying to figure out kind of where to place your bets. But this idea of experimenting, and if even one of those starts to get scale, and then kind of how you can step on it, I think that's a really powerful way to go about things. And then using things like video and paid media to actually improve your chances, especially where you see some success. So the example that I was going to take you guys through is for Samsung. A few years ago, one of our agencies actually did this to launch the Galaxy S3. And it's hard to remember now, but when the S3 launched, it was a completely iPhone-dominated world, other than maybe the BlackBerry. But in terms of smartphones, you either had an iPhone or you're very sheepish about what device you did have. And so the goal with this campaign was two things. One, to just generally raise awareness, and specifically one of the differentiating selling points about this phone was how easy it was to share information. It was one of the first NFC-enabled phones, and just by putting a phone up against your friend's phone, you could swap information very easily. So was there a way to demonstrate that, number one? But number two, if you remember the TV from that point in time, it was poking a lot of fun at sort of the Apple fanboy. And that was very deliberate. The whole point was to try to steal a little bit of that magic and show that there could be another device out there that's a bit sexy other than Apple. So what we did, ironically, I'm on a panel about mobile creative and I'm actually showing you a bunch of outdoor. But that was part of the intent in terms of getting some scale and helping to activate this. So what you see on the left, that poster, there were basically posters similar to this that we put up all over the place. And it said things like, I have a song for you, with a person, a life-size person basically holding a phone out to you. And for people who had any Galaxy device, the S3 or a Tab or anything like that, they could hold their device up to it and within a span of 5 seconds or less, get whatever it was that we could put into that poster. So we had tracks from artists like CeeLo Green and Fun. We had content from New York Times, The Onion. We had short stories and ebooks from lesser-known sites like Byliner. So there was a lot of great content that we went out and secured, and then you could essentially go up and touch your phone to this and get that content. The center photo you see there is in an airport. So we tried to put these in places where people were going to actually have a little bit of time to kill to interact with this, because really that's one of the things you're doing when you're using a mobile device. It's obviously a great productivity channel, but it also can be something you're using when you have a bit of time, right? When you're waiting. So we put them at train stations, we put them in airports, we put them in malls, places where people often had a little bit of time to kill, and they would be that much more motivated to get that content. We also put them in very public places because, again, that idea of one of these interactions would actually have a whole lot of people looking around kind of saying, well, what's that guy doing? And of course, what we really wanted was for that Galaxy person to go up and get their content and happily walk away. And if I can be honest, we wanted that Apple person to go up, put it up, and come back with a screen that says, sorry, you need a Galaxy device to access this content. So for once, maybe the iPhone user wasn't the cool kid on the block. That was kind of a very a purposeful part of kind of this campaign. And then the final picture you see there on the right was in a few of the highest traffic areas, airports and such, we actually had electronic kiosks, which with these giant touchscreens that you could actually flip through all of the content, touch on what you wanted, and then put the device in that cool little port there on the side, kind of very space age looking. So all of it was to give you content that you actually could use on your mobile device, but we tried to kind of build a much bigger creative platform around it. And you know, we talked about what metrics matter, and we had about 90,000 downloads, which was pretty good for a phone that had literally just launched. But I think much more important than that were the interactions, what took place in that airport when someone went up and walked away and started to play music or video right away on their phone that they just got from this machine. So that larger set of impressions and the overall role it played in launching the campaign. I mean, this was the part of the launch that got talked about in New York Times and Wired and a bunch of the press that this launch received.
Perfect. So this is a question for, you can maybe address Dan on the entire panel. And so what role does big data play in the creative process, right? And if you have a specific example where big data was actually crucial and center to driving the direction of the campaign and creative execution as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something where we have had some early success stories with it, whether it's incorporating into social. We've done programs that are kind of pulling things in real time from the social stream, and as someone goes to book a flight or buy a movie ticket, it's essentially bringing up data either from the social stream or from information web or whatever it is, and incorporating that into the creative so that it is a very dynamic piece of creative that's more likely to get interacted with. I think we're having some early successes, but I also think we haven't we still have a long way to go in terms of really being able to kind of harness these fire hoses of data and turn them into compelling creative experiences.
I think big data is, or data in general, there's small ones too. What to us as an advertising industry, I think it's really interesting for us to, I think Winston, you touched on failure, to know when we fail and to know when we succeed. And what data can really help us with is to optimize. A lot of what advertising does right now and does so poorly is that we look at the launch of something as the end. And really what it is the beginning of something, but we also need to know when it is the end. And that's where data really comes in handy. Obviously, to gather as much insights and try to be as much on target as possible. But the best way to succeed is to really, again, is to embrace that failure will happen to you. It will happen again and again and again. But when it doesn't, when it's actually a success, then data comes in really handy because then you know how to optimize it and make it better. You know, rather than spending money on trying to save something that's a failure, do it again. That's what I think. Thank you, data.
It's great.
I'm still working on small data, but we're using it really. I mean, you know, I kind of look at it, you know, as an ad guy. You know, we used to use cultural and business insights to drive our creativity, but you know, now it's today it's really data is driving our creative, and more, and that's not just in how we optimize our experiences. We're doing like an enterprise level redesign at Volkswagen.com right now, and I can't talk about it yet, but that the insight around what we found from our users really shaped the entire experience. We're also releasing a new service for an insurance company that's built around a bunch of available data, right? Which gets back to some other themes here about not going it alone, right, when you're building something, but really using the kind of data and platforms that exist out there to do something remarkable. So I think there's more and more opportunities as more APIs emerge and open up to you know, and again, I'm not kind of big data, but to use data creatively. And I think, you know, I still look at things like data, you know, going back with Nike Plus, right, and really using data to create loyalty and love. You know, I like this notion of data can create love or make love. And, you know, I worked on an app for Vail Resorts called Epic Mix, which essentially allows you to track all your ski days. And that came out of a data insight and the notion and the reality that they were using these RFID turnstiles in all the mountains, right? So if you get a ski pass, you go through the turnstile, they know exactly who you are, but they weren't doing anything with the data. So we took that data and made it into a social experience in mobile desktop. So I think it's just data is another great tool for creative people to kind of to use to do something.
I think something you mentioned as well. I actually think mobile is a hugely powerful tool for loyalty and for relationship building, because it is always with you and it is always on and you're constantly referring to it. And so whether that is, instead of the 10 punch card, right, now you have this mobile device that knows when you've walked into a store and it knows when you've bought something, or whether it is kind of a companion that helps you get smarter about yourself or about the business. So whether it's, you know, someone like Lowe's and what they're doing with helping you through a home project, right, with what you need to buy and kind of how to put it together, and it's kind of your constant companion, or all of the car companies, right? I think we all have car customers on this panel. You saw a lot of stuff coming out of CES, how increasingly what your mobile device is going to help you with is locking your doors and putting up your windows, but also telling you when it's time to get the car serviced, helping you diagnose things, mapping out routes, right? And so really kind of, it all merges together in terms of all of the data we have available and how that can help you have that much stronger of a relationship with whatever brand you're interacting with.
I think one challenge in the industry in this, it's kind of jarring my mind in this, is that we don't, brands and agencies we don't have enough people essentially creatively analyzing this data and then pushing it back into the creative process. And there's separate companies that do this, but still what I've found in my experience, particularly on the creative side, is that the analytics people are the first to go on the retainer sheet, right, or on the fees and the contracts. And I think we fundamentally have to change it. If you look at the Obama case study, which I'm sure everyone's analyzed here, about 100 analysts in real time working to kind of optimize both emails and everything they're doing in social and mobile and so on. I think that's a real challenge for everyone, including my company, to really operationalize for a data age.
How are we on time? Questions from the audience?
Perfect timing. I love that. All right, questions for the panel. I'm reaching out. God, you guys are so quiet. We even replenished the coffee. We gave you cookies out there. You're so quiet. Thank you. Oh, look who it is. Mr. Michael Kalle, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
Sure. Could you please introduce yourself and the company, please?
Yes. Hey everyone, I'm Michael Kalle. I'm with Buczaczer. And a question for you guys. You've shown some great case studies up here. So I'm curious to know, what was it like to get the clients to actually buy off and want to do this? Because a lot of themes we talked about today, and just historically in our industry, it takes a lot to get clients to take that leap of faith, especially with the type of things you guys are showing here. It's all really great work, so it'd be great to hear, what it took to get them to commit.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned the clients, because they're actually the biggest part of success or failure in our industry. I think it takes a really gutsy client, someone that is aligned with, I think, an understanding of what value really can do for a brand, the user value can do for a brand. So if we want to create relevant advertising in whatever space that might be, mobile is the topic of today, you need to be there with the notion of that you're solving, someone's touched on this before, but you're solving consumers' problem. And the CMO that knows that is the one that's going to win. Now, in the Chevy case, I think even if it was extremely successful, we got about 500 million views on YouTube in total or something like that for all the ads. A year later, GSP lost the account, the Chevy account, and Joel Unick, who was the CMO, was replaced. So even the CMO role is changing. They have about 18 months on the job. They've always been kind of fragile, but it's really hard for them. So I think for us as advertisers or advertising agencies to become successful, we need to not only create great insights and really bold creative, but what we need to do is that we need to be able to support that creative. We need to be able to support those insights. And I think a lot of you people in here today, even if you're talking about quantification results, it would be interesting to see a quantification and to see where can bold, aggressive advertising, how can that be supported in its best possible way? And that's what's really the biggest challenge, I think, to the industry. We have a lot of great ideas, have a lot of bold people, but unless you can put the numbers on the paper and bring it up to CEO, nothing's going to happen.
I totally agree with you. Especially in the mobile space, it really does come down to talking about the trends, the consumer opportunity, the engagement, because you're going to be hard pressed to find an econometric model that's going to say you should plow a bunch of money into mobile just because you're looking at a very small signal. And so it does come back to how am I speaking to my target, and then what am I doing with them. And then I think there's also, we're also in a dangerous space because as digital people, and I think most of us have been digital people for quite a while, we can kind of get ourselves into a situation where we can be very hard on ourselves about measurement. And because we have all of these numbers, and it's really important that we partner, if we're media people, that we're partnering with our creative guys to really have that story, as opposed to just being like, oh, I don't have the number, I can't sell it in. So
I think I spoke about it earlier, but if you want to innovate, you have to educate. I mean, it's just a fact, and particularly if you're in the service business. So in the Pop Secret example, we spend a long time with a client, and again, day-long immersions sessions on the state of mobile, state of social, and then also just kind of taking them through creative workshops about how to solve business problems with low-cost digital tech. So I can't, for us, that's something we do on an ongoing basis. And even then it's difficult. And what I'm finding more now is that if you don't bring the business case with you, just forget it. The ROI analysis has to be there. And